What's up guys, my name is Ace, and yesterday in Black Ops 6, we got our first big weapon balancing update, and this one generally nerfed the assault rifles as well as buffed the SMGs. And on top of that, we saw a nerf to the Recon combat specialty, nerfs to Flashbangs, some Scorestreak adjustments, and more. So in today's video, we're going to be covering all of that, and let's just dive right into this with the weapon balancing first. And starting it off with the XM4, they adjusted all of our range values, so we no longer have that really short maximum damage range that we had previously. Now it's noticeably longer, but headshots at that range are going to be slightly less effective. Instead of mixing 2 headshots in to cut that down to a 4-shot kill, now you have to mix 3 headshots in. Additionally, in our second damage range, you can see the range was noticeably reduced on that, and on top of that, headshots now don't do anything within that range. Whereas in that minimum damage range, the headshots are just as effective. It still requires 3 headshots mixed in with body shots to cut that down to a 5-shot kill. So overall, when it comes to body shots, this wasn't a massive nerf to the XM4, but it mainly targeted the headshot effectiveness, and it is very noticeably less effective to the head, unless you're using the CHF barrel, but that one also got a nerf with this update. The multiplier for that went from 1.48 down to 1.42, and looking at it pre-patch versus post-patch, pre-patch when using the CHF barrel, at all ranges, 2 headshots mixed in with body shots would reduce the number of shots to kill. Now, in the maximum damage range, it still only takes 2 headshots mixed in with body shots to help, which is nice, but then beyond that, it's now going to require that extra headshot, so 3 headshots mixed in with body shots in order to help. And that's with using the barrel that boosts our headshot damage, so that's pretty interesting. And that's pretty much it for the XM4 adjustments. Next, let's get into the AK-74. And with this one, they basically just eliminated that really short maximum damage range where 2 headshots could help. And then they also slightly reduced that second damage range, so our 4-shot kill potential is a little bit less now compared to pre-patch. And then on top of that, our base headshot multiplier was very significantly reduced from 1.3 down to 1.15. And what this means is headshots do nothing now with the AK-74. It takes the same number of shots to the head as it does to the toe, unless you're using the CHF barrel, which didn't change at all with this gun. After that, we have the AMES 85, and we see the same trend here. They eliminated that short maximum damage range where headshots were super effective, and now, by default, without that CHF barrel, headshots don't do anything with the AMES 85. Next up, with the GPR 91, we actually saw an increase to our maximum damage range by a pretty noticeable margin here. It's now 19 meters. However, within that range, it requires 3 headshots instead of 2 to cut that down to a 4-shot kill. So for the first 10 meters or so, this is a nerf, but from 10 meters to 19 meters, that's actually a little bit of a buff because headshots did nothing previously within that range. But then on top of that, our 5-shot kill potential did get reduced slightly, which is a common trend that we're seeing with the assault rifles here. And we did see a slight headshot multiplier buff with this. And essentially what this means is in the minimum damage range previously, headshots did nothing, whereas now you can mix 3 headshots in with 2 body shots in order to get a 5-shot kill instead of a 6-shot kill. Now, moving on to the Model L, they did that thing where they eliminated our short maximum damage range that we previously had, and then they reduced our 4-shot kill potential by quite a noticeable margin in this case, while also destroying our headshot multiplier from 1.3 down to 1.15. And this means by default, headshots no longer do anything to help with the Model L. You have to use that CHF barrel. After that one, we have the Goblin MK2, which barely changed. All they did here is they eliminated that very short maximum damage range where we could get a 2-shot kill to the head if both shots hit the head. But outside of that, everything's the same. Our 3-shot kill potential to the body is identical compared to pre-patch. And then finally for the assault rifles, we have the AS VAL, and this was the most significant nerf from this update. Let's first just focus on the body shots here. As we can see, our 5-shot kill potential went from about 43 meters down to just over 20 meters. That was a massive nerf to our 5-shot kill range. Then our 6-shot kill potential is now just 43 meters, whereas previously it was 53 meters. So again, very noticeable adjustment there. And then when we're looking at headshots, we no longer have that maximum damage range up close, where 3 headshots mixed in with a body shot could cut that down to a 4-shot kill. So out of all of the assault rifles, this one is definitely going to be the most notable adjustment, mainly because that 5-shot kill potential was cut down quite drastically. And that's it for the assault rifles. Now let's get into SMGs, where we see the opposite take place, where all of the SMGs actually got a little bit of a buff. And starting it off with the C9, we can see all of our range values were increased a little bit. Nothing too major here, but you should notice this gun is just slightly more effective in those mid-ranges. Then with the KSV, it's a similar story for our first 2 damage ranges. There was just a very slight increase. You probably won't even notice much of a change there. However, our 7-shot kill potential did increase by a noticeable margin. So it's not going to drop off to that 8-shot kill quite as early as it used to. And this one definitely should be a bit more noticeable than the C9 buffs. Then after that, with the Tanto 22, our maximum damage range didn't change at all, but the other 2 range values did get increased a little bit there. As for the PP919, again, we just saw some very slight range improvements here. I do want to make a note on the time to kill values here. If you guys saw my SMG breakdown video, I actually did make an error. I left a pinned comment there, but I just want to bring it up again here. I just missed a couple of the time to kill values. The 6-shot and 7-shot time to kill values were inaccurate on that chart. I have fixed them here. They are accurate now. But overall, you probably won't notice a huge difference with this gun, pre-patch versus post-patch. As for the Jackal PDW, again, we just see some slight range increases across the board. So again, when you're in those mid-ranges, you might see slightly more effectiveness with this gun. And it's the exact same story with the last SMG, the Kompact 92. All of our range values just got buffed a little bit. So when it comes to these SMG adjustments, honestly, you probably won't notice much of a difference, maybe just slightly more effectiveness at mid-range. Aside from maybe the KSV, you might notice that one a little bit more than the rest. And overall, looking at the assault rifle nerfs compared to the SMG buffs, I think this patch will bring them much more in line without really changing things too drastically outside of the AS VAL. If you're just going for body shots, in most cases, the guns are going to feel exactly the same way as they did pre-patch, aside from maybe a very slight range adjustment there. The main thing with the assault rifles is the headshots on average are going to be much less effective unless you're using that CHF barrel. And I think that does help bridge that gap, because if you included headshots with your time to kill calculation pre-patch with assault rifles, then the assault rifles were kind of dominating SMGs. Yes, you had to aim for the head, but if you did that, you were beating SMGs in point-blank situations while dominating them at longer ranges, since the SMGs do drop off fairly harshly in this game. So I do think these adjustments were overall quite positive for weapon balance in general. Now, just a quick note here, since I don't do this enough, if you guys like this level of detail that I go into with the weapon balancing patches, keep in mind I do this with every single weapon balancing patch throughout the year. I'll be keeping really close tabs on this, and if you guys haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do so you can keep up with these changes as time goes on. But it turns out those weren't the only adjustments that they made to weapons. They also adjusted the shotguns. With the Marine SP and the ASG-89, they just reduced the slug damage to the body up close from 106 down to 92. So it's no longer a one-shot kill to the body with slugs up close, although you still can get a one-shot to the head. And they did mention they will be revisiting this in a future update, so I believe they're just kind of making them bad on purpose right now until they can balance them a little bit more appropriately. And that finally wraps it up for the weapon balancing portion. Now let's get into the other adjustments. Some of them were quite notable here. The first one is quite big. When you first spawn into a game, if you join late, previously your character would auto spawn before you even selected your class setup, and in that time you could be killed, which was obviously frustrating because you haven't even selected your loadout yet and you already started the game with a death on the board, or sometimes even 2 deaths if it took you a little while to select your loadout. Then they also mentioned there was some general spawn logic tuning across several maps for improved spawning, and they do mention this is something they're always working on, they're collecting data, and they will be continuing to improve spawns as time goes on. Next, let's talk about that nerf to the Recon combat specialty. The first thing they did with this is they reduced the duration that enemies are highlighted through walls from 2 seconds down to 1.5 seconds. So fairly slight adjustment there. You can still track those players in real time. You've just got a little bit less time to see them. They do mention an additional reduction will be coming before Season 1. And I'm curious to see what they're doing with that, if they're just going to continue cutting the time down till they feel like it's in a good spot, or if they're working on like a rework for it and this is just a temporary measure until that takes place. But on top of that, they also resolved the issue that allowed players to activate the Recon combat specialty by changing loadouts. So people were abusing this, especially in Search and Destroy from what I heard. You could swap over to your Recon loadout partway through your opening rush route to see where everyone else ended up going on the map, and that was obviously very broken. Next, when it comes to Dispatcher, they increased the score cost when using Dispatcher for UAV from 500 up to 550, and for the counter UAV from 550 up to 600. Additionally, when it comes to other Scorestreak adjustments, for both the UAV and counter UAV, they increased the health against bullets, not rockets. It still takes the same number of rockets to destroy, but it's going to take you more bullets to shoot those down. Although post-patch, especially with a counter UAV, they're still super easy to pick out of the sky with just a standard assault rifle without even using that overpressured ammo. Although the UAV is a little harder to hit, and therefore it's going to be noticeably harder to take the UAVs out at least. On top of that, for streaks, they increased the initial explosion radius of the napalm strike. They reduced the initial entry delay of the LDBR. They increased the fly-in speed of the strategic bomber, which is nice to see. I called in several of those early on in the game's life cycle, and I very often got 0 kills because by the time it actually hit the map, the spawns had flipped, and therefore it's just dropping on my teammate's location. And then finally, for score streaks, they reduced the score cost for interceptors from 1250 down to 1150. As for equipment, they nerfed the flashbang a little bit, and unfortunately I didn't have any pre-patch footage here, but I can at least simulate what it looked like pre-patch versus post-patch. Because they did mention the exact value, they reduced the screen effect duration by 20%. So this is quite noticeable. Keep in mind, this is without using tac mask, and it does look like flashbangs are a lot more reasonable now compared to pre-patch. Then when it comes to movement, they adjusted the stance change cooldown to reduce the effectiveness of repeated prone to stand movement, which is called snaking. And you can see there's definitely a solid delay there where you can't really snake super effectively in this game anymore. And that's great to see, especially for the competitive players out there. After that, they improved XP earn rates for Team Deathmatch, Control, Search and Destroy, and Gunfights. However, they slightly nerfed player XP and weapon XP earn rates in the face-off game modes. Then they fixed the HARP Scorestreak issue where it wasn't showing the direction arrows accurately. It would track players in real time, but it wouldn't show their direction properly in real time. And then on top of that, there were just a handful of like UI bug fixes and stability improvements that they made across the board. And that's pretty much it. That's gonna wrap it up for yesterday's update. Quite a solid one. Definitely took care of a lot of the key issues that were going on with the game. It's nice to see they're making some quick improvements here. One thing to mention here that I have seen a lot of people talk about, there was no mention in these patch notes about network stability improvements or server stability improvements at all. And I know that's something that a lot of the community, myself included, are hoping to hear more about at some point in the near future, since that is still the biggest issue in the game, at least in my eyes. And with that, this is where I'm curious to hear from you guys in those comments down below. Based on everything you've seen here in today's video, how are you feeling about yesterday's update? Whether that's bug fixes, the Recon Nerf, the adjustments to the weapon balancing, how are you feeling about all of these changes that they made? Do you guys think these were generally positive changes, or maybe not? If you enjoyed this one, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.